Well, hello, my friends. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I've got some scrap wood and thrifted items to make over, so let's get started. My first project is this thrifted cutting board. I'm going to remove that rope handle and then sand this down to get some of the shine of that varnish off of there after I get it cleaned up. So I ended up having to cut the rope. I could not just pull it out. So to remove the rest of that, I'm using my drill to just go in there and drill as much as I can and then use my tweezers to pull out the rope. Next, I'm going to mix up some Durham's water putty so that I can fill those holes. And I always manage to get too much water in there, so I have to add more of the powder so that I have the consistency I need to fill the holes and get it smoothed down. After I fill those, I let that dry and then I can sand over it to smooth it out. These are some birch paint sticks that I picked up on Amazon. I'll leave the link below. I taped a bunch of them together so that I could cut them all at once to the size that I needed to put on the front of this board. I'm using Type Bond Quick and Thick to just spreading out one section so that the glue doesn't dry before I get them all on there. And just I'm going to lay them on one by one, add more glue, and lay on the rest of them, making sure that they're lined up with the top and bottom edge of the board and the sides. Once I have them all laid down, I put some weight on top of this and let it dry overnight. I'm going to mix up some milk paint stain in the color Sherwood Brown. You want to do about a 50-50 ratio here of powder to water, or you can make it thinner if it just depends on the type of coverage you want. And I'm going to start on the back of my board. Now, I didn't get all of that sanded off very well, so the first coat kind of fought me. It didn't really want to stick, but after that, it was fine. I did a second coat, and I didn't need total coverage anyway, so that worked out well. I'm going to go ahead and add that around the sides, making sure I get down in there where those little birch sticks meet the board so that that's all covered. And now using a little artist brush, I want to concentrate getting the stain onto the crevices of each of those slats. And then I will add some stain kind of around the edges and all over the front of the board, but not total coverage. I want this to have a nice aged and weathered look. But I did want those areas in between the slats to be enhanced with the stain. And you could also just use watered down paint for this step. I have a wood bunny cutout that I got from 24-Hour Crafts. I'm going to give him a coat of that same stain. Actually, I give him 2 coats. When that was dry, I sealed the entire board with the Duraclear Ultra Matte Sealer, as well as the bunny. There's a list of all the products I used in today's video in the description box below. Back to the board, I'm going to do 2 coats of Country Chic chalk paint in vanilla frosting. Trying to make sure I don't get too much of this down into those little grooves. I want that stain to really come through in those areas. But I do want pretty good coverage on the rest of this so that I can distress it back to bring that stain back out to the forefront. And you'll see that when I go to apply my transfers, I've already done the 2 coats and then sanded it down. These are the transfers I'm going to be using. It's called Blossom Bunnies, and I got these off of Etsy. Okay, so I'm using this one that's like grass and little daisies, and it doesn't completely cover the bottom section. So I will be using part of the other one that's just like this in that set. So I'm going to go ahead and transfer this one down first, just using my little transfer tool, and then burnishing that on with that transfer sheet to make sure it's well adhered. And then I will cut out 2 little pieces from the other one, because once I put this on that end to fill it in, the other side was just a little bit short, like this one went all the way to the edge and the other side didn't, so I added a little tiny piece over there as well. I'm going to be adding this part of the transfer to the top of the board, and this was where I realized that I really kind of distressed a little too heavily, because if I had just backed off a little bit, this transfer would have stood out a little bit more, but I'm still pretty happy with how it turned out. Now on the sides, I wanted to frame this in a little better, so I'm taking my antiquing wax, I'm going to brush that on and then just wipe it back with the cloth, and I'm going to do that around each side of the board. When that was done, I used my matte sealer to go over those transfers. I felt like my little brown bunny was just a little too flat, I guess you would say. So I added some black wax. I'm going to brush that on and wipe it back just to give it a little more interest. I had this little drawer pull or handle, whatever you want to call it, in my stash. I think it came off of another item. I don't remember what that was, but I just left it as is. It's black, but it's got some marks on it to where it looks kind of aged. So I just left it, marked where I needed to drill the holes. Then I'm going to drill those holes in there and just screw that into place. Now it's time to glue down the bunny, so I'm using the Type Bond Quick and Thick. I'm going to get him into place, put some weight on it, let it dry, and then I will come back and embellish his neckline with a little twine bow and a paper flower. For my next project, I'm using these little wood scraps that I did give a coat of shellac to help prevent the bleed through of the wood tannins into my paint. I'm painting one of these that vanilla frosting, and the other one is going to be this color from Up chalk paint that's called Fountainhead, and I picked that up at Micheals. I just thought it was a really pretty color, and it's a pretty nice paint too. So on the whiteboard, I distressed around the edges with my sander, and now I'm applying some of those rub-on transfers from that same Blossom Bunnies pack. I'm going to put this little bunny on here, and then I'm going to add this one that says Caution, Cutest Cottontails Ahead. I'm trimming down this floral one so that it'll fit on the bottom underneath that. And then I'm going to add a little butterfly up by the bunny's head. For the other block that was painted in that fountainhead color, I added just this one transfer, this sweet little bunny. And once those were on, I went ahead and coated them with the Ultra Matte Sealer. I have these little wood knobs. I think I got them from Amazon. If I did, there'll be a link below. I'm going to give them a coat of the matte sealer because I'm going to go in with some Dixie Belle Van Dyke Brown Glaze, and I don't want it to completely soak in that wood. I just want a little bit of coverage on here. I'm going to brush that on and then wipe it back. Anywhere that I felt like I needed to remove more, I used a baby wipe. I just want these two projects, I want them to be very kind of light and not heavily distressed. I'm going to glue those on the top center of each of my blocks with some Titebond Quick and Thick, and then just tie a little tea towel ribbon around that, make a little bow, and that's it for these. They are super simple. Next up is my ceramic bunny and my terracotta pot that I thrifted. I'm going to get them cleaned up and then give them a coat of Rust-Oleum's satin granite as a primer coat. You can use whatever kind of primer you want, whatever color you want. I just went with this because these are going to be done in a faux concrete finish, and I thought that would just be a nice undercoat for this particular project. I'm mixing Dixie Belle's Hurricane Gray with some salt wash. I'm doing about half and half. So this is the consistency I have. See, it's really thick and there's quite a bit of texture in there, which is what I want. So I'm going to use this round brush that has like a tapered end on it and just start pouncing away, getting all that beautiful texture all over this bunny. And I'm going to do the same thing with the terracotta pot. And both of these will get 2 coats of this texture finish. And in the second coat, I actually add more salt wash and make it a little bit thicker. The casting I want to make for the terracotta pot is this bunny from Meadow Hair by Redesign. I got this from Amazon. I'm using Das air dry clay to make my bunny casting. I'm going to get that all trimmed off there and take this out of the mold and then glue it. After I smooth the edges down first with some water on my finger, I'm going to glue this down onto the pot with some Titebond Quick and Thick. You just want to make sure when you're gluing these down that you check all those edges, pressing gently so that you don't distort your casting, but making sure that every little edge is glued down as much as possible because you know the clay does kind of shrink and crack a little bit when it's drying. So if you have any gaps, those are even going to be more prominent after it's dried. Once the glue had set, but my casting was still not completely dry, I went in with that Hurricane Gray and gave him a coat, making sure that I got all those edges covered so that I didn't have any gaps or white areas of the clay showing. Then I went in with the same mixture I did for the bunny with the salt wash in it and did the 2 coats of that on this. And I did the inside of this as well. I wanted it to the whole thing to look like it was cement or concrete of something of that sort. When those were dry, they both got a coat of the matte clear sealer. And now we're going to go in with some black acrylic paint and this round stippling brush to add some little black marks all over the bunny. Cement has different colors in it, and it always kind of looks like spots to me. So I thought this would be a good way to disperse that paint on there. I'm taking a wet or damp rag to kind of wipe off any areas that were too harsh and just kind of help blend that color in. I'm going to do the same thing on the pot. I'm going to just dab some of this on there. This was more difficult on the inside. I had to use different types of brushes. And I'm just kind of smearing it around with that rag just so I get bits and pieces of the black all over that gray. And then we'll be going over that with some other colors. So it'll look good in the end, but right now it looks like a hot mess. So next up was some brown. I'm going to do the same technique, just stippling that on with the brown acrylic paint. And then I'm coming in with a light gray and using my moistened sea sponge for this part. I'm going to dab that all over. I think I watered it down a little bit too because I don't want it to be very opaque. I don't want it to cover up those other colors I just put on there. I just want it all to blend together. So I'm going to take that damp rag and just kind of dab. I'm not really like wiping or smushing. I'm just kind of dabbing to pick up some of that paint so that it doesn't completely cover all the other colors. Now I'm mixing a darker gray called graphite with that light gray so that I can get an in-between color. I'm going to water this down considerably and then sponge that over the entire bunny, just like I did with the previous gray. And this is just to give, I want a lot of depth and different shades mixed in here so that it looks more authentic. I'm going to do the same technique, sponging that on and then dabbing it back with a wet cloth. I'm going to use the same exact techniques on the terracotta pot. The last layer of paint is that light gray color that I've got watered down, doing one final coat of that and dabbing it back with the wet cloth. Then I'm going to paint the bottom of the bunny and the terracotta pot with the same colors using a sponge. Just I'm not using any of the salt wash in this, it's just paint. When that's all dry, I give both of these another coat of that Rust-Oleum matte clear. Thank you so much for watching today. I hope you find my content useful and inspiring. If you'd like a little more inspiration, you can click on my playlists that I have from previous springtime projects right here. See you next time.